Before we make the clothes, we really should paint our figure. So this is obviously a fantasy figure, and so the skin color is going to be fantasy as well. Okay, so I finished painting this little figure, and I began to add some of the hair. This is, you might be thinking, wow, that hair looks really bad, and it does at this point. This is just the very first layer, and I'm not done with it yet. So I'm going to zoom in. So you can see what I'm doing. I have cut some lengths of thread, and I have one very fine individual embroidery thread that's kind of a light blue, and then I have a thicker thread that is kind of a lavender, slightly, I don't know. It's kind of a very muted lavender. And so then I'm going to fold it in half, try to line up the ends so that they're fairly close in length. They don't have to be exact. And then you take a little bit of glue, you don't want a whole huge amount, this is a bit much. Put it in a couple of places. Okay, and then we take our folded thread, then you kind of pinch those ends together so they look less like a loop. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing with the next one. So it's okay that you can see the scalp through these strands of thread. Okay, this is just the first layer. Okay, so now we're going to do the next step in making the wig, and this, you start out with some of this, this is embroidery floss. I think this is the DNC brand, and it actually comes, it looks like it's pretty thick, but if you separate the strands, you'll see that there are, how many are there? Six different strands. Okay, and at this point we're only going to use one of these little strands. So you separate them out, and then you grab one of them, and then you just kind of hold this gently and use your fingernail and kind of pull most of them back, and it's kind of like magic. You get a single strand. And then we're going to fold this in half. Try to make the ends fairly even. And then I have several little bunches of these. I'm going to zoom in on this. Okay, so you have the full thickness of the embroidery floss, and then you have this other thicker individual strand. You could actually use all of these and just bunch them up, if that was the color that you liked. You could just use the embroidery floss that comes in the bunch and use that. You can combine them in any way, but you want several of these little groups of threads. I like the embroidery floss because it's already kind of grouped together. And we're going to be tying these together with this single strand. So I'm going to zoom out so you can kind of get the big picture. So lay this about halfway divided. I mean, you don't have to be using a ruler and stuff, but approximately. And then we're going to tie a square knot. And a square knot you tie by putting, just choose whichever side you want. I'm going to start with the left side, is in front. Okay, so the left strand is in front, crosses over, and then comes around. And let's see, that looks about half. Okay, so then pull it tight. Now you're going to use the opposite, okay? So now it's going to be the right strand that goes on top, and then wrap it around. And, you know, honestly, thread can be very annoying to work with, but just if you need to take a little break, just do that so that you don't lose your cool. And especially if you've got like a sweatshirt that just keeps kind of grabbing all the little strands, it can be very frustrating. So I'm going to actually take that off. Okay, so we have this, and now we're going to lay the next one on top. And we're going to do the very same thing. Left first, crosses over the front, tighten it. Now it's actually the same strand, but it's on the right side now, and that one's going to be in front, and pull it tight. The next one kind of doesn't have to be perfect as far as, you know, they don't have to line up perfectly, but you want them fairly close. Okay, so I've made two of these little wigs, one here and one here, and I'm going to glue them in two different spots. The first one I'm actually going to glue with this little seam going horizontally, so along the top of the forehead. I've already added glue, and I'm just kind of gauging how far down the forehead to situate this. And then this one is going to go right here. Okay, now that just has to dry,